Hey everyone, welcome back to another Genshin Impact video. Today we are going to be giving you guys a quick rundown of the version 1.2 update patch notes. And so the update came out about a day ago, but for those of you who didn't have the chance to go over the patch notes, that's what we're going to be doing here today. And so there's actually a lot to cover here. The patch notes were quite long, so the way we're going to break this down is we're not going to go over every little thing in detail, but rather do a quick run through of the patch notes and highlight certain points that we think will bring the most benefit to the most players. At the end of the video, if you enjoyed, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. And with that having been said, let's get started. So, the Chalk Prince and the Dragon version 1.2. The first thing that stands out here is compensation. So there's two sets of 300 Primogems, one set which was given for maintenance, and the other set which was given to some bug fixes or certain circumstances. Not exactly sure what that was about, but free Primogems are free Primogems, so we'll be happy for that. Now, in order to be eligible, you just have to be Adventurer rank 5 or above, and the collection period lasts until the end of version 1.2, so you've got a while, but just in case, don't forget to check your mailbox and collect those 600 Primogems. Now, as far as new content that actually got added to this update, there's a whole new area, the Dragonspine Mountains, and this is that little pocket that was out of bounds between Mondstadt and Liyue, and it is a huge area. Even though the size on the map isn't very big, it doesn't take into account the amount of verticality that this mountain has, and this could actually pose a bit of a problem because of the new mechanic Sub-Zero Climate. So essentially, characters in Sub-Zero Climate will continuously accumulate sheer cold, and how this works is there's going to be a little bar above your HP bar, and it's going to fill up with a light blue color that indicates sheer cold. Once that fills up, you're going to start losing a percentage of your HP, and it doesn't matter if you have a shield up or not, it just does percentage HP straight through any shield. So healing could work, but ideally you just want to avoid sheer cold by getting next to bonfires, torches, and other sources of heat, as mentioned here. Within Dragonspine, there's a new mechanic called the Frostbearing Tree, and this is going to function as sort of a statue of the seven that's unique to Dragonspine. So as you can see here, you collect crimson agates, and then these are like the Geoculus or Anemoculus, and once you collect them, you can go to the Frostbearing Tree to turn them in, and you can see here you get various rewards including Acquainted Fates, Intertwined Fates, Glider, Mora, Experience, Talent Up materials, and Gadget Diagrams. So as you explore the mountain, it's definitely important to keep checking your minimap to make sure you're not missing any of these crimson agates. There's also a new domain that's been introduced that's on Dragonspine, which is Peak in Vindagnyr, and forgive me if I'm pronouncing this wrong, I'm not exactly sure how it's pronounced, we're just going to call it the Dragonspine domain for the rest of this video, but essentially this will function the same as any other domain, and it introduces the two new artifact sets, Blizzard Strayer and Heart of Depth, which we'll be talking about a little bit later. So next we can talk about these new characters, and this is something that most of you will probably already know about because they've been leaked for a while and there was a lot of hype building to this point. So the first character is obviously who is on banner currently, and that's Albedo. So he is the new 5-star character, Geo Sword User, and his elemental skill creates a solar isotoma using the power of alchemy, and when you attack enemies within its range, a blossom is generated, dealing additional AoE Geo damage. The center of the solar isotoma can also act as a platform to elevate other characters. His elemental burst, Rite of Progenitor Tectonic Tide, deals AoE Geo damage in a wide area and also generates fatal blossoms in the solar isotoma zone, dealing additional AoE Geo damage. So for those of you who haven't gone into the test run to try Albedo out, I highly recommend doing so. You could read more about his skills there of course, but also try out his gameplay and see how he would fit into your team. For me personally, after having done his test run, I think he seems pretty good. He's not a top tier Geo DPS like Ningguang is, but I'd say he's probably the second best right now. Moving on to the next 5-star in 1.2, and that's going to be Ganyu. And this is again another really hype banner. This is, I believe, the first true waifu banner, because since the launch of this game, every 5-star exclusive banner we've had has either been a guy or it's been Klee. So Ganyu is really the first true waifu banner available, and we can guarantee there's going to be a lot of hype around that. So she's a cryo bow user. So a lot of people have been looking at her leaks and they've been calling her a cryo amber, and if you look at the skills, I definitely see where they're coming from, but I think it's a little bit different, in the sense that generally cryo is more of an enabling support. It seems to me like she could be flexed between cryo support or the introduction of the first bow carry, which I would love to see. So we've definitely got two very interesting 5-stars coming up in 1.2. But let's move on for now and talk about the new weapons. So the weapon banner currently is around Summit Shaper, which is the 5-star sword, and this is going to be the sword equivalent of Memories of Dust and Vortex Vanquisher and whatever the claymore was called, I forgot. But essentially all these weapons are the same theme, and so we'll go over the passive really quickly here. When the wielder is on the field, any current active shield absorbs an additional amount of damage. On hit grants an attack boost, max 5 stacks. When under the protection of a shield, the attack boost effect increases by 100%, which means it effectively doubles. So this is a pretty good sword if you're running Geo or another shielding support like Zhongli or Diona or Xinyan, where you can continually be shielded to take full advantage of the passive. Is this going to be amazing for Albedo? We'll have to see because he does have defense scaling as well as attack scaling, so it's not going to be perfectly synergized with him, but I think that given this is a 5-star weapon, just the raw stats are going to make it good. Beyond that, we also have Festering Desire, which is the new 4-star sword. So this is a freebie you get by completing the story quest Principus Cretaceous Chapter Act 1 and the event quest Festering Desire. So during the event, the character that equips this sword will receive some special buffs while exploring the Dragonspine area. Snow Tomb Star Silver is going to be the new 4-star claymore, and going down the list here with Dragonspine Spear and Frostbearer as well, all of them have the same passive as they belong to the same weapon theme, so I'll just go over it once. Hitting an opponent with normal and charge attacks has a chance of forming and dropping an Everfrost Icicle above them, dealing AoE attack damage. Opponents affected by Cryo are dealt further attack damage, and this can only occur once in a specified period. Now, in order to obtain this claymore, you had to explore Dragonspine and fulfill certain criteria to obtain the forging method. The Dragonspine Spear has the same passive as before, but now for this weapon, you had to complete the world quest, the Festering Fang, to obtain the spear and unlock its forging method. And as for the Catalyst Frostbearer, once the Frostbearing tree has reached level 10, travelers will be awarded the blueprint for forging Frostbearer. And now if you remember a little bit earlier we talked about the new domain giving new artifact sets, and so we'll be talking about those here. Blizzard Strayer is the new cryo set, and so for 2-piece it gives you a 15% cryo damage bonus, and then at 4-piece when a character attacks an opponent affected by cryo, their crit rate increases by 20%. If the opponent is frozen, crit rate is increased by an additional 20%. So this is obviously a really strong set, and it's going to be great for melt comps and cryo carries like Chongyun and Kaya. Next we have Heart of Depth, and so this is the Hydro artifact set. So the 2-piece Hydro damage bonus 15%, and then 4-piece is after using an elemental skill increases normal attack and charge attack damage by 30% for 15 seconds. So given the current Hydro roster, this set is a bit more specialized. Obviously, it's going to be absolutely insane on Child considering his elemental skill, and I can also see this being used effectively on carry Mona as well if that's how you want to run her. But for Barbara and Xingqiu, I worry the effectiveness might go down a little bit. Maybe if you're one of those guys that wants to run DPS Barbara, this would be amazing for her, but for most typical Barbaras, it might be better to stick with Maidens. Moving into this next section, new events, there's really not that much to talk about except for this red text over here. Version 1.2 events no longer require original resin, and this is a pretty big change because if you think back to events that we've had in the past, all of them had a resin cost, and so it meant that in order to participate in the event, you had to sacrifice farming EXP or artifacts or ascension materials, but now you don't have to choose, you can do all of those things as well as participate in the event at the same time. And you also don't have to worry about using your resin optimally, play the event at your own pace, as fast or as slow as you want without any gating. They've also introduced the Stellar Reunion system, and essentially what this is like a returning player reward. So in order to be eligible for Stellar Reunion, you have to have been Adventurer rank 10 or above, must not have logged in for the past 2 weeks, and it has to have been over 45 days since last activating Stellar Reunion event. So the way Stellar Reunion works is in 4 parts. The first part is just rewards. So you log back in and the event triggers, and then you can claim Primogems, resin, and other rewards as they mentioned here. The second part is going to be login rewards. So every day you log in and you can claim rewards similar to the ones mentioned before. There's also a set of Homeward Path quests that are exclusive to returning players, and so this will just be extra quests you can do every day to claim even more rewards and accumulate points. And then once your points reach a certain value, you can claim the reward, which in this case is going to be a prototype Rancor. And finally, the fourth point is Reunion Blessing, which is just double drops, and this is pretty straightforward. Moving on to part 6, we have new story quests. So the first is obviously Princeps Cretaceous Chapter Act 1, and this is going to be the main story quest for Albedo, and also tie in to the Dragonspine quests. Now there's also Ganyu's story quest coming up, which is Sine Unicornis Chapter Act 1, and this will become available at a later date. I'm going to assume it's going to come out with her banner, so we could expect that in about 20 days. Moving on, there's also some new world quests. So as you can see, there's a handful of world quests introduced with Dragonspine in the mountains, Festering Fang, the Great Mountain Survey, and now Festering Fang is the one that gives you the free polearm, as well as the blueprint, and it looks like one of these other quests is going to give you a recipe for goulash as well. And they've also introduced a new world quest, Return of the Jade Chamber, which, story spoilers, if you haven't gotten to that point yet, I'm very excited for this because it's the return of the Jade Chamber, and if you haven't already played it, the way that the Jade Chamber goes away is pretty amazing. So we're not going to mention it here. If you know, you know. Then there's also Fishing for Jade, which I'm assuming is probably something that's tied to the Return of the Jade Chamber. And as always, completing these quests gives you a bunch of rewards. There's also a set of new commission quests in Dragonspine, and this is something that I'm less excited about because I've spent a good amount of time in Dragonspine already, and honestly, I am not enjoying it. The sheer cold is so annoying, and in the event you get lost and you're not able to get to a torch or a heat source quickly enough, it just demolishes your team. So moving around in that area in Dragonspine is really obnoxious, and I hope I don't have to do commissions there, but it is what it is. Now as we move into section 7 and beyond, there is just a lot of text here, and so we're going to pick and choose what we want to talk about. The first thing is, of course, gameplay. They've introduced a bunch of new monsters in Dragonspine, and for the most part, as you can see from this list, they're just cryo versions of existing enemies. So all of the Hilichurls got cryo versions. For Fatui, there was the Electro Mage, and now she's a Cryo Mage, and Ruin Guards have been turned into Ruin Graders. And of course, all of these have slightly different mechanics, but for the most part, it's nothing that's going to trip you up too much. They're not significantly stronger or faster, they're just cryo versions. And we're going to go ahead and skip everything up until point 7, which is Spiral Abyss. For floor 9, characters on the field will continually accumulate sheer cold and lose HP once sheer cold reaches its limit. So this is exactly the same as it functions in the world, and there's also going to be a Ruin Brazier on the field, and while it's activated, getting close will reduce sheer cold, so this will function as the heat source, and enemies will attack it to stop it, and then after being stopped for some period of time, it will restart automatically. And so this is just a slightly more interactive version of Totem Defense, which is something that we're already very familiar with. So aside from being a little bit annoying because sheer cold is there, I don't see this being that huge of a change. Now, floor 10, it's the same thing, you get sheer cold, but instead of a Ruin Brazier, you're going to have a Warming Seelie. And for those of you that don't know, it's basically the same as a regular Seelie, except it's orange, and it acts as a heat source, so you could follow this around as it travels on the field, and it will protect you from sheer cold. Now on floor 11, you're going to have Engulfing Storm, which continually drains your elemental energy until the electro element is removed. And so this makes characters with a cleanse much more useful, so you definitely want to bring Jean, Bennett, Xinyan, or Diona, who can all cleanse electro with their utility. And all party members will also deal increased cryo damage, so Diona's looking really good here, as well as some melt and freeze comps. As for floor 12, all party members deal increased geo damage. Again, this is essentially an indirect buff to Geo for the time that this is active, but it won't be forever. Now we'll also have Blessing of the Abyssal Moon, which is updated every 2 weeks. So for phase 1, when a character obtains a cryo element shield from a crystallized reaction, a shockwave is released dealing damage to surrounding enemies. And when a character obtains a cryo elemental shield created from a crystallized reaction, elemental skill cooldown is decreased by 1 second. Then phase 2, when a character obtains a cryo-elemental shield created from a crystallized reaction, attack increases by 5%, attack speed increases by 5%, and movement speed increases by 4%. This effect lasts for 20 seconds and has a maximum of 5 stacks. And considering most Geo characters will be able to get off multiple reactions over the course of 20 seconds, we're expecting to get 5 stacks and keep that for the duration of the fight, so this is pretty big. Phase 3, when a character obtains a cryo-elemental shield through a crystallized reaction, crit rate increases by 8%, this effect lasts for 20 seconds and has a maximum of 5 stacks. Again, same thing as before, we're expecting the maximum of 5 stacks to last throughout the whole fight, so that's going to be 40% crit rate, which is huge, especially when you pair that with the new cryo artifact set that we talked about earlier. Now moving on to system changes, there's just one last point that I want to touch on here before we end the video, and that is new character ascension rewards. Travelers will be rewarded with 1 acquainted fate each time their character completes an ascension at level 20, 50, and 70. And it's important to keep in mind that this is a retroactive change. So the way this works is, if you have 3 characters that have undergone 3 ascensions, then you will get 9 acquainted fates. And this applies even if you've ascended them before this patch. And now obviously moving forward, every character that you ascend at 20, 50, and 70, you will get 1 acquainted fate for each of those ascensions as well. This is a great change. Even though this is a one-time reward, it's just a nice freebie for naturally progressing your characters. Now as we keep scrolling, we can see there are a ton of other changes that they've documented in these patch notes, but in large, these are mostly minor changes and quality of life things that aren't really major points of impact for patch 1.2, so we won't be going over those. Now if you want to read these in more detail, we will have a link to the 1.2 patch notes in the description, so you can just go down there, click on it, and take all the time you need to go over these changes. But that does it for us this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more Genshin Impact and Exo Heroes content. Be sure to stay tuned, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.